Welcome to the Voyager podcast, hosted by Chris Fick and Brad Alexander, a show about authentic faith in unlikely places. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We hope you're encouraged. Welcome back to Voyager Season 2. My name is Brad Alexander. I'm here with Chris Fick.
Hi, Brad.
Hello. So today we have a guest that we've been trying to schedule for a bit, and due to scheduling, it took a minute, but we're so excited to have him, and I'm going to have Chris kind of cue up a little intro to who we're talking to today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be having Gabriel. I met Gabriel probably about 16 years ago or so, probably, and man, his story is so cool. It is unbelievable transformation of what God can do in a life. And we've seen that not just start, but it's been continuing to unfold over time. I think it's going to encourage a lot of people. So, Gabriel, thanks for being on. Welcome. We're stoked to have you here.
No, hey guys, thank you. It's a pleasure. We finally made it, right?
Yeah.
We finally made it, right? And what better day when it's pouring rain in Southern California, right? So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be able to tell my story and how God pulled me out of a dark place I was once in my life.
Mm-hmm. Some of the things you've been through are topics that I see other pieces on, but there's very little hope at the end of most of them. People will bring humanity to kind of how someone gets involved in gang life or some of these things, but then at the end, a lot of times it feels like you're left with, but what now? You know, the bits I know about your story, and we're going to get into it today, it's just really cool to see who you are now and the person that I've met and interacted with at church. And it's like, I would have no idea. And that's just a testament to what God does with people, you know?
No, absolutely. And, that's what I want everybody to take away from my story, not who I was, but what God has made me, right? And not to focus on the life that I once lived, but the life that I live now, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I want to accomplish today, because I know there's people out there that are probably in that lifestyle right now and maybe thinking of, how do I leave it? What do I got to do? Can I? And hopefully what we discussed today, it opens up a window and definitely they can climb through it.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to kind of the beginning. So you grew up in the San Diego area, as far as I know. Were you raised in a religious household at all? Did you know God as a kid?
So, just to touch, I was born and raised in San Diego, California. We grew up Catholic, but it was more just that's what it was, right?
Like by tradition.
By tradition, there you go. By tradition.
Born into it.
Born into it. Did we go to Mass on Sundays? No, we didn't, so it was just more like, hey, in the Mexican American culture, that's what every household pretty much, grows up being, right? Because that's all we know. And that's what our parents knew, our grandparents, and it just passes on to the next.
Yeah, that makes sense. What were family dynamics like for you? Is your family close?
Yeah, we were close. I have two brothers, two sisters, right? And then, we had our cousins and aunts and uncles. We were all close. We would all get together at my grandparents' house for Christmas. We would have big Christmases. My family, they're all, working people, right? We weren't rich, we weren't poor, we were just, we were all right, and we had the Thanksgivings, we had the birthday parties, we had the big Christmases, with all the cousins and uncles there, and the whole living room full of presents, and us nagging our aunts and uncles when we're going to open them, right? So the dynamic was there, it was cool, and, as time went on, everybody grew up, and, like in every household, it just gets smaller and smaller, and then it gets a little bit bigger, and, so yeah.
Yeah. What were influences like for you? What things were you into growing up?
So I was always a troublemaker just growing up, right? I wasn't really into nothing. It was just more, I was always like the class clown at school, right? I did like boxing, right? thank you, Rocky. Right?
Dude, I was about to show Cannon Rocky because I think like every young man, this is like your rite of passage to become take it to the next level.
Yeah,
Rocky.
yeah. So I was into the Rocky, what is it, trilogy, right?
Oh, there's like so many.
Yeah.
of them.
So I grew up liking the boxing. I would actually put gloves on and box. In the apartment complex we lived in, right? I would box all the other kids or whoever wanted to put the gloves on, I would box them, right? I never pursued it, but I think that's one of the things I was in. And I was always getting in trouble in elementary, I had a big thing where I was just, I didn't like nobody staring at me. It was a trigger for me when I was a kid. I don't know why, but that got me into a lot of trouble. Right, where my mom and dad would really like dig into me and say, "You're not made of gold." People can look at you, all right. And I'm like, well, people do look at gold, so maybe I am, right? But whatever, But I tried the BMX scene, when what was it, Haro bikes, GT, Mongoose, where we lived, everybody was into that. And then the skateboarding, I was into the reading the Thrasher magazines.
You're speaking Brad's language.
I know a little bit, right? We were the family before my mom and dad got divorced, where we didn't have the Nintendos. I had to go to my friend's house and play Nintendo, right? I wanted to be there. We didn't have the Nintendo. We had Atari. We had 2 Atari stations, right? But we didn't get the nice Paul Peralta skateboards, GNS, Hasoi Hammerhead skateboards. Yeah. It was more like, hey, you're going to get the skateboard at the swap meet.
The Nash from the...
It was the off the wall, the one that had a little rat on the back.
The Vision one?
No, it wasn't Vision. Vision was good. It was,
Vision was
It was just...
I know, that's what I was thinking. Oh, off the wall. Yeah, okay.
It was just a generic, thick board, heavy,
Yeah.
So... I tried to do that, but it was just just trying to hang out and trying to fit in with those kids that did, right?
When you say that you were into boxing and you kind of had the trigger of people looking at you, was anger something that you felt like you struggled with when you were young?
Yeah, I did have anger issues. I think a lot of it was just my dad was real hard on us. We always had, we never needed, but he was real hard on us, right? And he wasn't the dad that, would bring you in and hug you. He was more the dad, if you give him the wrong tool, you're going to hear it, right? You better know the socket when he says, hey, give me the 9/16. If you bring him something different, he's just dropping F-bombs and everything on you, you know? And I think that affected me a lot, right? Because my dad wasn't abusive physically, but mentally he was, right? And that started just building in me, right? Where now I was starting to hold anger, and then take it out on whoever was there.
Because you're almost because you're disrespected by your dad, but there's nothing you can do about it. It's well, then everyone else is going to respect me. They're not going to disrespect me. And if staring at me feels disrespectful, then it's you're going to handle it. That makes complete sense to me.
Exactly. And, in the Mexican culture, you never talk back, regardless if you're right and they're wrong, right? It's just unheard of. You never raise your hand. You never raise your voice. And that's the type of household my dad ran, right? He was very, the macho man type towards my mom. I didn't know any different other than to love him no matter what, right? That. It was just okay, I guess this is what dads do, right?
Yeah.
They yell at you, they cuss you out, right? We lived in apartments, right? Me and my brother, we were big WWF fans, right? So, I thought I was
I feel like this is a commercial for the 80s.
Yeah, so we're taking it way back. So, I thought I was Hulk Hogan one week, and then, you stay up and watch, what was it, Thursday night, main event, WWF. I thought I was a British Bulldog. So we would get down there and wrestle, and my dad would come down and, he would sneak down, and there was the way the design of the apartment was when you're coming down from the second story, it was just you can come and look, right? Without seeing the person there. And
okay.
And we would just look because they would get quiet. You just knew somebody's watching, right? And they would get quiet. And there's my dad. He's just looking at us. He comes down and, you know, I don't know about your guys' parents, but my dad had this big, thick leather belt. When leather made contact with skin, you know, it wasn't nice, right?
It did all the talking, huh?
It did all the talking. So, yeah, you know, I don't know. I guess we were being bad by wrestling. I see it, right? I mean, I wouldn't want kids wrestling in my living room either, right? But that's how it was, right? But we would still do it, you know, like we were a pain in the butt too, you know, so we got it, you know, and my dad would give it, you know, and, you know, sometimes my mom would hit us, you know, whatever. But, you know, I think just the anger came from the verbal abuse, you know.
Do you think you were like a sensitive kid at all with that? Or were you just kind of like hardened to it? You're just like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do anyway, you know, whatever the consequences, I'm still going to wrestle. I'm still going to do whatever I want to do.
Now that I think about it, right? Because I've never talked about this, right?
This is a therapy session. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
So now that I'm looking back, it's just like, you know what, that didn't help me. It just made me harder.
I was talking to my friend who's a pastor of like 30 years, and he's just been through everything. And we were kind of talking about some of this, and he was saying, you know, life calluses a lot of us, and we build these thick calluses. And then what God does, the circumcision of the heart, is like he comes in, he cuts those calluses off. And that's why a lot of us, you start to mature in the faith and you start to like deeply feel things again, and like things move you to compassion, or it's like the Holy Spirit gets in there and you tear up at a worship song and you're like, where is this coming from? Because so much of your life you were calloused over.
Right.
And it's like stuff stopped affecting you, but nothing was really getting through.
Right.
I think actually that a lot of the people that are the hardest are actually the deepest feelers. Because I think a lot of times that callus, you got to callus it up. If you're feeling something and that makes you vulnerable, then you have to work extra hard to like distance yourself from that thing.
That makes sense.
Because you feel like you're not allowed to be human and actually feel things and actually experience things. And you know, I mean, obviously we're not like neuroscientists or any of that, but like
speak for yourself, man.
There's some serious stuff that happens young. Like where, you know, a kid is looking for acceptance and unconditional love, and discipline's a big part of that. Obviously, I think there's a really important mix to that. The pendulum has certainly seemed to swing the other way now, and I think we're going to have a whole bunch of different ramifications for that. But not feeling that acceptance and that rules without relationship breeds rebellion. And if you don't have the relationship, the rules, fear only works so long, especially with a young boy, because they eventually go, I ain't scared of you anymore. And matter of fact, I'm not scared of anybody. And that probably is part of what leads you into the next part of your life. I would imagine.
No, absolutely. You know, and like I mentioned, you know, the whoopings didn't do anything for me no more. You know, like you said, you build that callus, right? And I felt like that callus was built everywhere, you know, in my mind, in my body, where like I was numb to it now, you know. Like my dad wasn't a monster by any means, you know. He was just, that's how he was.
And that's how he probably grew up. Very similar.
Yeah, a lot of it is generational.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, right? But it was just, that's how he was. He wasn't the, you know, the father you see on Hallmark movies, right?
Right.
He wasn't, you know. I remember one time, you know, we sorry guys.
No, you're good.
No, you're good, man.
Yeah. I remember one time we got these new pajamas. It was for like Christmas, right? And they were like glow in the dark. You know, remember when everything was like glow in the dark? And,
yes.
And I was so excited to show him, and he was just like, he didn't receive it well, you know? And that's how my dad was, you know? But he had a lot of good, you know, too, but it's just, you know, he wasn't the Hallmark dad, you know? He was a hard worker, and, you know, I think sometimes we forget that piece where it's not about always going to work and providing and you think your job is done, right?
Yeah.
It's about loving your family, showing the love to your children, to your wife. That means a lot more than, hey, I go to work and I put food on the table.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you come home and you're like, I'm off.
Yeah.
So anything else that comes my way, you now become a nuisance to me.
Right.
And so, yeah. And obviously we're not here to demonize anyone, but there's a familiar trend where there's something about that. I guess this is a good encouragement, I guess, even for dads. Love your kids.
Yeah.
Like really love your kids. Like just because they're looking for that, have grace with them because you were a kid and you remember how you needed grace and all that stuff. But I think there's an important part to that might
absolutely
encourage people.
I mean, for moms, dads, that are listening, like take time. You don't have to go buy this, new iPhone or buy a PlayStation, or just tell your kids you love them, and because we need that.
So when did your parents get divorced? So they're together at this point.
Yeah.
You guys are living in the apartment.
Yeah. I want to say I was in the 3rd grade. As much as my dad, how he was with me, I wanted to go live with him when my mom and dad split up.
Yeah.
So, you were like, what? Wait, what? But Gabriel...
Do boys want their dads?
Yeah.
Man?
And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I don't want to be here. My 2 brothers and sister at that time, they stayed with my mom. Yeah. So that's where it really gets like interesting.
And you're the oldest.
And I'm the oldest.
Well, a lot of times we sell it as that kids are resilient, and it's like, they'll bounce back from anything. And it's like, now we're reaching generations where everyone's addicted and going through stuff. And it's like, apparently we're not as resilient as the generation before us tried to sell it off as.
Yeah. And the reason they say that is because they're beat up too. And they're using it. It's like, you're a mess too. So anyway.
I think the important thing is that it's like never too late to turn it around. Just like you went to live with your dad. It's like, kids are forgiving, but it's like, turn it around if you can, I was on a work call the other day, and Porter ran into my office when they had went to Target and they came home. And Porter ran in to show me something, and I was like on a call that was like important. And I was like shooing him out, and Alyssa kind of grabbed him and he ran over and started crying in the corner. And then I got off the call 5 minutes later, and she was like, he took that really hard because he was so excited to show you a thing. And it's like, you just reminded me of that. Right. It's the same story. And I had to go and sit down with them and apologize to him. And then he was over it right away. But you realize it's like, I don't want him to absorb a bunch of these moments.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And the human mind just remembers a lot. Mm-hmm. And it goes way back. Here I am, I'm 45 years old, and this happened when I was, I don't know, 8, 10. Yeah. I'm still able to talk and remember it. But I remember it because it crushed me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was the first sign of things starting to go off the rails a little bit? Was it after the divorce?
Yeah, because, so I moved, the divorce happened. There was a lot of conflict between my mom and dad, with, whatever they, were going through. The neighborhood that we lived in was, it was well known for gangs, and
okay.
My grandparents, they bought 2 houses there, right? So in that neighborhood. So, my grandma and grandpa lived in one and we lived in the other. And we lived in the heart of it, right? It was like the heart of the neighborhood, right? And then going to the new elementary school, right? Like, you're the new guy, you're the new kid, nobody knows you. And how can I say, in the gang culture, just like right now in our professional, workplace or whatever, you use references, right? Like, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I used to work for so-and-so when you're applying for a job. But in the gang life, it's who you know, right? Right. I'm the new guy at school, but hey, my cousin is so-and-so. Oh, okay, all right, you're good, mm-hmm. right? That's how it is, right? So you start telling them, hey, I'm related to so-and-so, and they kind of back off, because, that's where it starts. It starts in the schools, right? The gangs, right? You start knowing people, everybody starts clicking up, so going into that and then just trying to fit in, right? With my bad attitude, with,
your prowess for boxing.
Yeah, the boxing and all, I was just like, cool. I like this, right? Everything that I have fits in with what's going on here, right? So I just started behaving bad, right? I was so bad where I had a educator tell me, you're not going to be anything in life.
Jeez.
You know, this is my teacher.
Which is just so sad that it's like, you should go back and find that teacher and say, you're wrong. Anyway,
Right.
That's a side note, but I hate when people do that.
Yeah.
Because I got labeled some stuff too from people back in the day, and I'm like, you don't get to do that. Anyway,
Right.
They have their own issues.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of it was my actions, right? I mean, she saw what she saw and she just said, hey, you're not going to be anything. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was always in the counselor's office. You know, I was always like getting referrals. And it was just, that's when it just started. Like, they even told me, like, we're only letting you graduate because we want you out of here.
Wow.
That's how like crazy it was, you know.
Knowing what I know now, you wish when someone seemed troubled, it's like you can guarantee they're going through stuff in their life. You wish people would identify those kids and be like, I'm going to press into you harder because you need it more. And that's not what happened.
Just where we were at, we were already doomed for failure, right? We're like, the odds were against us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're in a neighborhood full of poverty, you know, gang-infested neighborhood, you know, like, the odds are against you, right? Like,
Yeah. And can I ask you, as a guy who's never been in that world, right? Completely different scene. When you end up living in a neighborhood like that, is it scary or is it alluring?
it's luring.
Okay. It's not like, oh, there could be drive-bys or shootings or like I could get robbed. It's not like scary like that. It's more like, oh, this is kind of like,
This is cool.
It's like a
Right.
football game.
Yeah, because you live there, right? Now, it's scary for the people that don't live there, right? Or that are from a different neighborhood, right?
gotcha.
But for me, it's just like, this is cool, right? Like, it's another day at the park. You're used to it, right? You're used to the gunshots at night. You're used to the whatever happens, right? Yeah, I don't want to get shot. But yeah, you know, elementary is where it started. I mean, I remember I was getting in fights over girls in elementary school. I mean, literally, like, we were walking from the school to the alley where I lived, and that's where we would have the fight over a girl, right? And, you know, and the thing was, like, you better win. If you don't win, guess what happens? You get another whooping when you get home, right?
Wow.
That's
so it's
how-
a way of life.
That's the way, right? Like, you better win, right?
Especially when your family reputation's on the line and stuff, you're right. Like, you
Yeah.
know. And did you have cousins in the gangs already at that point? Because you
Yeah.
mentioned that having the reference of,
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, you know, everybody knows everybody. And, you know, so just, you know, like, that's how I kind of, you know, was able to fit in, right, at that elementary.
Do the younger guys have like older guys kind of coming around them and kind of like bringing them in? Or like, how do you get like initiated to actually being in versus just being at school with them?
I mean, at the elementary level, nobody's bothering you, right? Unless you're going out there and, you know, and they'll shoo you away, right? Like, hey, get out of here. You're too young. Get out, you know. But eventually, you know, hey, you still keep hanging out with, you know, that's where it starts, like I said, you know. And then you move into like junior high school, and that's where it really gets like, okay, you still want this, you know. And it's just another level, right, of violence, another level of friends, right? And then you just go from there, you know. And then, you know, as in junior high, you know, you're talking about, you know, going to parties and, you know, trying to be that cool guy, you know, at the junior high school, you know. I couldn't go to any of the dances because I was bad, right? You know, and you have to have a certain grade average or whatever, or you couldn't have like a referral that month. I ended up getting kicked out of the junior high for fighting. And this is like, for you to get kicked out of your, like, the junior high you're supposed to go to, right? I'm not
in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're not like,
Yeah, I'm not going
it's not
to
like you're in
like
Beverly Hills or
no,
something.
I'm
Yeah.
going to the school like that. Hey, you have to take me, right? Because I
Yeah.
live here. They're like, you're out of here. You know, we're gonna send you to a continuation school. All these fights that I was getting into, you know, I would always get arrested by the school police. They would come to my house. Hey, you're under arrest for assault and battery, but you're not going to jail. And then came the time where I assaulted the principal on my way to school. He followed us. It was me and a group. He said, I can still remember. He said, "Don't talk to me like you talk to your mom." And as soon as he said that, I turned around and started stabbing him with a pencil. You don't talk about nobody's mom, especially when you're a kid, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so when he said that, like, it triggered me, and I had the pencil, and I started going at his face, right? So
Dang.
I continued walking, and then that's where they the police picked me up at the school. I was in class and they called me out and they arrested me. And when I went to juvenile hall and I had my first court appearance, all these charges came up. I had about 20 counts of assault and battery.
Okay.
But all of these were from every fight I had got into. And
you thought there was no like necessarily a record of it or whatever, that it was going to matter, but then it all fell at once.
It all came and I had like 20 counts of assault and battery. Every fight I got into at school and they actually arrested me but didn't take me to jail. That was all like kept record of.
Wow. And it's like, just to put it into perspective too, you've spent years kind of building that mentality, and then this guy takes like a really low blow at you, and it's like, you almost don't know what provoked him to even like attack at you like that and expect that something wouldn't potentially happen.
You kind of like, if someone disrespects your mom, like you kind of have to do something. It gets complicated when it's your principal.
No, yeah. He wasn't right. He wasn't wrong. Right. And I was the one that was wrong in that by assaulting somebody. Right. There's no explanation. There's no right when you assault somebody, right?
So now they're going to drop the hammer on you and they're pulling all these cases.
So yeah, I'm in juvenile hall. I'm like, I'll be out of here soon. And in juvenile hall, you're waiting in a tank with all these other juveniles, and then, here comes what is it called? The bailiff. And then they bring you out and your public defender or whatever, reads you your charges or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, so am I going home today? And they're like, no. I'm like, why not? Well, you got about 20 counts of assault and battery. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? I only hit him. He's like, no, but remember this. I'm like, oh gosh. Man. So I was just like crying, I was like, here, Mr. Tough Guy, you better not look at me.
Yeah.
I was crying, I was like, you saw the little kid in me now, right?
Dang.
But that judge there, he was known to like not like gang members. I mean, what judge does, right? But especially
he like throws the book at
and
people.
It's his district. He's probably sick of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So as soon as I knew I was going to go before him, I was like, I'm not going home for real. I ended up getting sentenced to 30 days in a juvenile ranch facility, right? It was called a 30-day stop program. 30 days for a kid is a long time.
What was that? So I have like two questions. Mm-hmm. So one, as all this is going on, are you developing like a reputation with the people you actually care about, like other people in the gang or like your peers? Like, are you developing kind of a reputation for someone who like kind of handles business when push comes to shove?
Well, I mean, I'm still a little teenage punk, right? Nobody's really like, oh, they're just like when they see you, oh man, you got out. Oh, you finally did your little time. And they used to call it 30-day snitch program, right? Because it's 30 days, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you did your little 30-day snitch program. And, you start feeling like, oh, man, I accomplished something. Like, now you got the
you leveled up.
Yeah, the older homies, they're like, they're recognizing me, right? So you're feeling like, dude, I'm, now when I walk down the street, everybody knows who I am, right? But
yeah,
I mean, but nobody's like, oh, trying to like recruit you or nothing like that. Like it sounds dumb now, but back then you're like, yeah, like I accomplished something, right? Like,
is your dad like pretty pissed off about all of this? Like when you came home from that 30 days, was he?
Yeah, he was hard on me. And I know I feel like I kind of jumped over, but a lot of it, I started getting in trouble because, it was just me and my dad, right? And my dad worked nights, right? So when he was gone, I was like pretty much alone, like my grandma would tell me it's time to come in, but I wouldn't listen to her,
Yeah.
So that's where I started really getting it, like staying out late, hanging out, because my dad, he wasn't home. I would have parties at the house when my dad was at work.
Yeah.
Like I would invite all my friends over, and girls and guys, and we'd be out drinking in the front yard, and I remember one time my dad, he actually came home early.
Oh,
because he would come home around 1 a.m, and he came home early. He just looked at me and I looked at him. I don't even care that he's there. I'm more embarrassed about like my friends that what's about to happen. And he's like, in Spanish, he's like, get all these effing people out of here right now. And I'm just looking at him. I'm like, no, no, we're hanging out. He's like, you better get them effing out of here or I'm going to call your probation officer. And that was like the magic word, like probation. Okay, hey, you guys, you got to leave. I wish they had Ring doorbells back then because you would have saw this like big line of people just walking out, like walking out of a concert, And, once he left, it was just like we went at it. You know, at this point, I was just kind of like, you know, you cuss at me, I'm gonna cuss at you. You know, and he's like, oh, you want to hit me now? But it was more like, it was just everything that was built up in me, you know, finally started to come out, you know. But so that's where I started getting in trouble. You know, I had a lot of time on my hands. There was not a lot of supervision. You know, my grandma and grandpa could only do so much. So that led to, you know, just going to juvenile hall multiple times. You know, I ended up violating my probation and going back to the camp. You know, now it's for 240 days, right? And that's where I, you know, decided I was going to leave, right? And ran through the mountains, right? Ended up in Mexico. It wasn't just me. It was me and a few other guys.
How old were you?
I was probably 15.
Oh my God.
So you escaped from your juvenile hall camp and fled to another country.
Correct.
At 15. That's wild.
Yeah.
So you're sitting next to Gabriel in church. You're like, he's
I
like
know.
smiling.
You never know. You never know. But it's like, it's so crazy, like the fearlessness at that point, at that young
Yeah,
age.
15. Yeah.
It was fearlessness and desperation, right? Like, just, I don't want to be here. And, you know, they have a border patrol station out there. So they notify border patrol and they're looking for you. And the goal is just to get to that part of Mexico, right? And I'm not like endorsing anybody escaping from anywhere, but if you ever do, don't do it during the summertime, you know, because we did it during the summer. And I mean, we didn't plan. It was just like, let's go now.
Oh, you'll die from dehydration.
Yeah. So, and everybody becomes this like expert on, you know, mountain climbing. And, you know, here we are, a bunch of juveniles in sweatpants with black Velcro shoes, you know, sweaters, whatever. And they're like, okay, so, because I'm starting to get like really thirsty, right?
Yeah.
Just grab a pebble, put it under your tongue. It's going to create saliva. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what we were doing, right? And then it just got to a point where I was so thirsty that, I mean, I was almost thinking about just drinking my own urine.
Someone know someone in Mexico, or like, what were you going to do when you got to Mexico?
No, yeah, somebody knew somebody out there.
Okay. I'm like, what do you do when you cross the border?
No, yeah, we had a plan. So we end up coming out in a ranch. It was like just some random ranch. We came out through the backwoods, right? And I mean, the first thing we did was hit the water hose, you know, and start drinking. And, you know, drinking water from a water hose in Mexico or anywhere, right? It's not, you don't do that.
You can get parasites, right?
Yeah. But, you know, at that point it was like, whatever. So here we are walking down the road. We hitchhiked, you know, and somebody picked us up to where we needed to go, you know, and we stayed there, you know, for I think one night. Then we crossed the border and we were staying at a friend's house. And I was just like, I can't do this, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't at peace, you know. It was like, you know, like I had a debt to pay.
Was this like the first sense of like a conscience because you're starting to do some pretty like hood rat stuff and getting into serious trouble, and you're not showing a lot of conscience at all, and you're pushing through all the boundaries. Is this like the first glimpse of like, I don't like where my life is going? Was that what it was?
Yeah, and it was just a glimpse, right?
Right.
Because I was like, you know what? Like, you know, I'm 15, 16, whatever. Like, I can't be on the run forever. You know, I got like a whole life ahead of me. You know, we're staying at a buddy's house, but I mean, you know, in a couple of days, they're going to be like, hey, you guys got to go, right? Like, you're not going to live here.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so finally, I was just like, I told my dad, I said, you know, hey, you know, I'm going to turn myself in. He's like, yeah, that's the best thing you should do. I'm like, okay, I'll go home tomorrow. He's like, come home, you know, shower, eat, and we'll take you to juvenile hall. To this day, I still remember ringing the buzzer at the door in juvenile hall. And they're like, yeah, what do you need? I'm like, oh, my name's, you know, Gabriel. I escaped from, you know, from here. And they're like, okay, just hold on and come in when the door pops, you know. And that was it, you know. And I went in and, you know, I had another court hearing. And I still remember the judge saying, I started crying in front of the judge because they wanted to send me to, it's called Vision Quest in Arizona. That's like a boys ranch. But it's more tougher.
Okay.
It's like, you know, that's like what they call gladiator school, right? Like,
I've heard of that.
yeah, Vision Quest. So she's like, I'm going to send you to Vision Quest and there you're at least going to do 1 year, right? So I just started crying in the courtroom and begging, please don't. And she's like, if I ever see you in my courtroom again, that's where you're going. I went back to the camp and did my time and got out. I was okay for a while and then just started going back to.
So when you initially get out, is your mentality like, I want to do better? Or are you right away thinking, I'm going straight back to what I was doing before?
I wouldn't say like, hey, right away. Like, I was just like, I knew I didn't want to change.
You weren't convinced that you needed to change. That's why it was just a glimpse of like, oh man, I don't know, really, like, it's interesting. Like, it's like the Holy Spirit's like working on your life early, but there's so much more.
Yeah. I still got to go through more. Right. Like, so it was just a glimpse, and then, I didn't come home and just like, go back to a life of crime. It was just, I wasn't ready to change. I still wanted to, be defiant, right? I heard that word so much when I was growing up. You're just defiant, right? You're defiant. I came back home. I was on probation and, I started hanging out with older people. One older lady that would come and pick me up. It was nothing like sexual or anything. It was just like, she would come pick me up. She was actually the sister of one of my ex-girlfriends. And she would come pick me up and she would buy beer for me, right? That's where I took my first sip of beer. It was a Budweiser. Like, what is this stuff?
And, not good.
I didn't drink my urine in the desert to drink it now.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, my dad didn't like that. And I told him, well, boy, you want some older guy to come pick me up? It's a girl. Why are you mad? He's like, because she's older than you. You shouldn't. So he ended up, my probation officer would come and do their visits. And she came and my dad started just telling on me. And I was looking at him and why are you telling on me? What's going on?
For me, this is like a sign of a societal problem, right? Because I wasn't in a gang. I was in the straight edge scene in my teenage years, and I did go to continuation school. And I was detained by the police a few times. I never went to juvie, but it was always like, next time it's going to be worse. Next time you mess up, it's going to be worse. Next time you mess up, it's going to be worse. And that's not a strong motivator if no one's given you a better way to live.
Yeah, fear only works so long.
Yeah, so it's like, when you get out of that, camp, is there another way of life that's presenting itself to you that seems desirable? So what are you going to do? It's like, well, what opportunities do I have?
Right.
And I feel like that's like with prison and with all these things, people get out. And if you don't show them or help them implement into society, then it's only a matter of time before they're slinging dope again. Because how else are they going to make money?
Absolutely.
We penalize them for the life they've led, and we say, you mess up again, we're going to make it worse. But we don't say, let us help you transition back into society.
No.
Let us help you get a job. Let us help you make a living that you can build a career out of and provide for a family out of. And then when we don't give them those opportunities, it's just like, but you better not do what you've been doing. And it's like, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
And it's kind of ridiculous, And I think that's what, going back to what this show is about, that's what the gospel is it's like showing people a different way to live, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, I don't know now, but what I experienced, I don't remember, when I was in juvenile hall going to a church service or somebody coming into what they call the housing units, right? And talking about God, or any literature being passed out, or anything, I remember the magazines that, my mom or dad would bring me were just like boxing magazines, but because that's all I knew, right? I didn't know God, I didn't know what I know now, and I think I didn't want to know him, I felt like the life I was living was the right life.
How far does it take you? Like your teenage years and you're in and out of juvie at this point. Did you ever get thrown into gladiator camp?
Not in the juvenile system.
Okay.
No, not in the juvenile system, but, I was in there about 3-4 times, I met the mother of my biological son and daughter. I got in trouble. I think I was 18. Okay. I got in trouble. And that's when I got introduced to the adult system, right? So I got in trouble for voluntary manslaughter. So, there was a crime committed. Somebody died. I was sentenced to 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah, in state prison. My daughter was born. I think she was, like 3 months, 6 months old when I left her. And I got introduced to the adult system, and
11 years is like,
oh, it's a long time.
I mean, that's a decade of someone's life
Yeah.
being taken away.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
I was incarcerated for all my young adult years.
Was that a wake up call for you?
Absolutely.
Some people go to prison, they're like, oh, that was my education. I'm going to just get better at what I'm doing.
It's going to sound crazy what I'm about to say, but it's the best thing that happened to me. We always say through tragedy, there's a blessing. Through, the storm, there's light, and it's true, and people sometimes will say, including myself, like, well, why does that have to happen for this to happen? I never cared. I never cared about God. I didn't want to hear about it. I was like, dude, I want to go to the clubs. I was down in Mexico with the fake ID or paying the bouncers at the door to get in, trying to fit in. Everybody wants to be around the people that have money, the girls, the cars. That's true. You hear it in the movies, but it's true, right? People want to be around that stuff, through all of that, and I get in trouble as a young adult. Now it's just like, that's the best thing that happened to me.
At what point in you're serving the sentence, at what point are you like awakened to God, where all of a sudden you're like, I'm open to this? Like, or what happened first? Did you feel like you hit rock bottom and then he met you there? Or was there like a thing where you were like, what was the exact problem? Because did you serve all 11 years?
So you do 85% of it.
Right.
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit. So while I was in the county jail, going through, the courts and all that, somebody told me, oh, it's too late. I see you got the Bible in your hand. It's too late for that. Right. Because you know what? When you're like facing a lot of jail time,
you're grabbing for anything.
Yeah.
Trying to find something. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't know God personally, I knew there was a God. Right. And I'm like, I need you, God. I'm scared. I'm about to lose my family. And I did something very bad, like that I hurt somebody. And I'm not talking about my family. I'm talking about the victim's family.
Yeah.
Like that should have never happened. And somebody told me, it's too late for all that, man. You got to be a man and just take it now. I'm like, okay. So while I'm in the county jail, like that's a gladiator school. I mean, I'm an 18-year-old around people that are coming back from prison with life sentences, people that are never going home. They're coming back for an appeal. You got people that are facing, serious time. And in there, you have to be a part of it or you're going to be dealt with. You can't be like, oh, I'm a Lone Ranger, right? You got to find who you're going to run with.
I think I'd heard that county, like a lot of guys are trying to prove themselves before they get to prison too. So it can be more dangerous because there's a lot of people checking each other.
And everything's segregated. This group of people here, this group of people there. I saw somebody get their ear bitten off during a fight. In the old county jail here in San Diego, they were like big pods, right? So you can only run from one side of the room to the other, right? And their catwalks and everything. And there was times where the tension was real high, and so it was pretty crazy. It was I was scared, but you can't show that in there, right?
Well, everything's like predator and prey.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was in there, going through all the courts, from somebody telling me like, hey, it's too late, put that Bible down. So then, I get sentenced to the 11 years, get shipped off to prison. I remember the first night through the intake process, they put me in a shower. The door's bars, right? No privacy. And they're like, hey, just wait in here. It's super hot. I'm drenching in sweat. I'm scared. I'm going away for 11 years. I'm not going to see my family. The guard comes and shoves my plate of food, throws it on the floor in the shower. This is where thousands of prisoners shower. And right there, I turned around so nobody could see me because people are watching. As soon as you walk in, they're watching you. They know you're new. They're trying to figure you out.
Yeah.
I start crying. I fall on my knees and call out to God. I said, God, I need you now. Help me. And I promise you that I will change my ways. because that really broke me, like to see that, right?
You feel like an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like less than human.
Yeah. So now, did I transform like from one night to another? Absolutely not, but I knew like God, like I've tried to do this on my own and it just,
He has your full attention now.
yeah, like God, I'm ready, and that's why I say like, I'm so glad that it happened, because God knew what he was going to do with me, even though, I know there's going to be people who say like, well, why did somebody have to die? I don't know. I'm sorry, but within my own heart, I accept you, God. Like I'm ready. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this no more, and it took all that time, all the, fights, all the drinking, all the nights I woke up with hangovers, the times that I got beat up, the times that, I got shot at, whatever, to get me to say like, God, I need you now, and some people might say, oh, you did it as desperation, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. We all do it out of desperation.
Exactly. Everybody has a different like rock bottom,
right?
In a sense,
and that was my rock bottom. Being in that shower and my food being thrown on the floor for me to eat it. That was my rock bottom. And that's where it began.
So, what does the process look like from there?
Well, just adapt into that life. It was hard, right? It was so hard for me. To accept that I was going to be away for that long, right? There was a lot of insecurity, with my ex. There's a saying in prison, like, you can't live in and out. You got to live in, because if you live 1 foot in, 1 foot out, it's going to drive you crazy. And that's what I struggled with for probably about a year. Before then I had told my ex, I said, look, just forget about me, and because I'm going to be gone for a while, forget about me, but the human response to somebody that's going through something that's like, no, I'm going to be with you.
I'll stick with you.
I'll stick with you, right?
I'll give you my 11 years of my life.
Yeah. And she's young too. I'm young, like, okay, and
she didn't know she was signing on to this originally. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, okay, but then the little things started happening, right? Where the letters stopped coming. The collect calls weren't being answered no more. And then finally, like, I get that letter. Oh, no, it was a phone call that I had with her. And she's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this no more. I found somebody else. I went through it, right?
Yeah.
I went through it. But I felt so relieved, man. Like, it was like, like now I can do my time. I started seeing what God was doing. I started talking to people that were following God. I started going to the chapel within the prison, right? I started reading. I started signing up for a little like Bible. It's not a college, but you get a certificate. You read the Bible, and then there's like little worksheets, and you mail them back. I gave my life to Christ, But through that, it wasn't all like gold roads or anything, right? I was involved in prison riots in there because I had to, right? I had to, there was one time we were at the weight pile, and it was me and a friend. That's the only guy I really hung out with. We grew to liking each other, and always like, we did everything. We ate together. We shared commissary. If he didn't have any, I would give, and vice versa. So we would always go work out together. You wanted to be with somebody out there. You don't want to be alone on the weight pile.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we had another friend. His name was Joe, right? And they tried to gang up on him out there, right? I won't say who, right? Doesn't matter. But he was outnumbered. And all the guys that he was with, these were all like guys with like big muscles. They left him there, right? And I told my friend, I was like, hey man, we got to help Joe. So we ended up having a riot inside the weight pile, right? And I didn't like it, but it was something that like I had to do. It was one of those situations in there where it's just like, you can't walk away, and he was our friend, so we did it. We fought, We got put into solitary confinement for like 2 weeks until they did their investigation, and that was that, you know. But I still stayed on, like, God, I need you, you know. And being a Christian in prison is very hard. It is, because you will get tested a lot, not by God,
because they want to see if you're about it or if you're just using it as like a cover, right?
That, and people will think that you're weak. Right. And they'll try you. That's the word they use. I'm going to try them. Through all of this, through God working in me, right, through going to church, through, you know, hanging out with, you know, people that were reading God's word, my character started to develop, right? Or I wasn't a trigger anymore. I wanted to talk about things, right, before it resulted to something, right? I didn't have that, like, let's go. I know it was God, the Holy Spirit working in me, showing me, like, Gabriel, look, this is what happens when you just react, right? And you don't think.
Being sanctified in there.
Yeah. So, you know, through all of that, you know, through the years and years, was I, you know, white as snow? Absolutely not, you know. But I started seeing, you know, from not trusting in man, but trusting in the Lord, right? And knowing that, God, you're going to protect me. You're going to deliver me from here. I was, you know, blessed to have an administrative job in there, and I was there for several years. You know, I got to eat food from what we call the free world, right? So I got to eat food when they would have, you know, they would celebrate for anything. Oh, it's summer, first day of summer potluck, you know, and they would bring all sorts of food in, and, you know, and my duties were to buff the floors with a buffer, you know, clean the bathrooms, take out all the trash in the offices, you know, and then I had my little closet, the mop closet, and that was my little office, right? So they would say, you know, they can't give you anything. They're not supposed to, right? Hey, can you go clean this for me, right? That was a big plate of food.
They give you the food. Clean this plate for me.
Yeah, you know, so I would go in there, and, you know, it was on, right? I'm like, I'm eating all this food that nobody has access to, you know. So for somebody to trust you in there, you know, especially staff, a correctional officer, that's like, it says a lot, right? And those are positions of trust, right, where I was at, because there's a lot of sensitive information. There's a lot of sensitive, there's a lot of things that you can make a weapon. There's a lot of things that, you know, the normal prisoner doesn't have access to, right? So when you get put in those type of jobs, it's, you know, they trust you, but they don't, right? They're still watching you. They're still, like, you know, but the people that were back there, I knew all of them believed in God. They saw something because they gave me a whole different level of trust, right? They would tell me, like, we care about you. You know, we want you to do good. We see it in you, right? And I always took it like, God, are you talking to me? I would try to do whatever I could to occupy myself with things that were going to be focused on God, right? I got my GED in there. You know, when I was there, I got my GED, so that was a big accomplishment for me.
I think one thing the show kind of illustrates, and your story and a lot of stories, is sometimes, like, we think life is super linear. You just go from A to B. Most of us, it's like peaks and valleys. And even our journey with God, it's like, you know, like you're working it out. And there's still wrestling at times, or like something good happens, something bad happens. And there's something that I don't want people to miss, because you're making a really good statement, is like, well, why did it have to get to the point where you're in prison and then you surrender? Like, why did God allow it to go to that point? And it's like, God looks at things a lot differently than we do. So it's like, you look at the New Testament, most of it was written by Paul, who in his former life had abused, potentially killed, imprisoned Christians. Like, he was an enemy to the family of God. And he goes on to be this great apostle who writes most of the New Testament, radically transformed, and God came after him, not the other way around. He was zealous, but it's like he has a radical experience. And I remember I was sitting with my friend Chris once, and we were talking about, like, old stories. And I was telling some story where I was in really bad shape and I was driving, and I had like 20 or 25 muscle relaxers. And I'm like, you know what? The laws back then, if I would have gotten pulled over, like I would have gone to jail. Like I know someone who got a felony for 2 Vicodin, you know? And I was like, it's just God's grace, I guess, that I never went to prison. And he said, Brad, it was God's grace that I did go to prison. And he went multiple times and he's like, you know, I would have never gotten it unless God took me that road. And I think when I hear your story, it's like whatever you've done in life or wherever you've gone, like it's God understands and God will work through it with you. But as you're kind of on this new path, did it take you a while to forgive yourself?
I've done a lot of things, right? And ultimately, you know, what landed me in prison was probably the worst thing I've ever done in my life. You know, I had to come to terms with God and talk to him and tell him, like, man, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry for, you know, from the smallest to this. You know, once I accepted him, you know, I felt that weight just like off of me, where it was just like the more I understood what he was trying to do, the more I read about his forgiveness was more of like, okay, I can move on now, right? And I think that's where a lot of people stay stuck, right? Like, oh, I can't, you know, I can't be a Christian. I can't serve God because I did this, I did that, right? Doesn't matter what you've done, you know. What matters is that you ask for forgiveness and don't go back to it. You know, don't go back to it. But accept God in your life. God sees it all the same. People need to know that, because I think people shy away from coming to church. They think like, oh, if I say that, then people are going to look at me different.
Yeah. And even if they do, that's not how God's looking at you.
No.
I've told stories that I could see from someone's eyes that it's like, oh, I just said something and your opinion of me just changed, you know? It's like, you know what? That's okay, because they're not God, and we know from scripture God's heart, and God wants to forgive. We serve a merciful God. He's compassionate. His desire is that all would come to repentance. Peter tells us that. Like, why is he long suffering? Why is he allowed all of this to go on so much longer? Because his desire is that everyone would come to repentance. He wants to have relationship with us, you know?
Right.
Paul, when he's recounting like how Jesus was seen after he's risen from the dead, you know, by the 12 and by his brother and by all these stuff. And he says in 1 Corinthians 15, after that, he's seen by James and by the apostles. Last of all, he's seen by me also as one born out of due time, as he like appears to him on the road to Damascus. And he says, for I'm the least of the apostles, whom I'm not worthy to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am. Like, if you were to look at like what you think an apostle would be, you shouldn't call me an apostle. But he says, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. And then he says this, and his grace toward me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all, yet not I, but the grace of God, which was in me. So he then becomes a man on a mission. And of course, Paul wrote, you know, over a third of the New Testament, and will go down as one of the greatest, you know, well-known followers of Jesus of all time. Brilliant mind, laser sharp focus. And he says, you know what? You could say I don't belong here, but by the grace of God, I am what I am. But I'm playing with house money, so I'm not messing around. And that's what I think is really cool. So, because you finish out your sentence, this is when I meet you. I had just moved to Carlsbad to do youth, and then I find out Gabriel's getting out of prison, and he's going to come to the church. Basically, that's what I had heard.
So, you know, I finally got released, you know, and everybody would say, yeah, when you leave prison, you leave your Bible too, right? Like saying you're going to forget about God. You just use them while you're here.
That was like your crutch is what they're trying to say.
Pretty much,
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I got out. I went to a program called Prisoners of Christ. Did that program, got my first job, moved back with my dad, right? So went back with my dad. I met my wife, Cello. She lives up here in North County, and you know, my dad lives down in San Diego. So
How did you meet?
So cello.
Yeah, I actually don't know this.
So we've known each other from like when I was, crazy, right?
Yeah.
When I was running,
I'd heard that. Yeah.
So
Okay,
we've
she
known-
knows what she's getting into.
so we disconnected, and life went on, and I went away, came back, and we connected again, right? So we started talking, and
she's going to our church at the time.
cellos, at that time, Calvary Chapel, Carlsbad, right? So she invited me. She's like, "Hey, you want to come to the church?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And I was nervous, like, oh my gosh, So finally, I start coming up here. I'm like, where am I? Like, there's no graffiti around here. What's going on?
I said the same thing when I moved here. I could not believe it.
So I'm like, why is it everything's like clean up here? What's going on? And I remember talking to Pastor Roger. He was a pastor at the time, and Cello introduced me to him. And I think every pastor is gonna look after his sheep, right? He's digging. Yeah. Hey, he has to, right? Like, hey, you're gonna protect your flock, right? Like, and he's like, hey, I want to take you out to lunch, right? I'm like, really? I'm like, he's like, yeah, I want to take you out to lunch. I'm gonna take you to this place in Carlsbad called
Is it Pollos Maria?
Yeah.
That was like his spot.
Yeah.
This
So
is
Rob-
Tori's dad,
Yeah,
for
it's my
anyone that
fa-
doesn't
it's my-
know.
This is my father-in-law. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like, does he know, like, I was in prison? Like, I'm telling Cello, like, hey, does he know? Like, she's like, yeah, he knows. I'm like, okay. So, we go out to eat, and, Pastor Roger, he's just talking to me, making small talk, and, I gave him my testimony, and he asked me, well, why here? Why do you want to come here? Well, Pastor, this is the only church I know, and Cello invited me, and she says she's been coming here for a long time. She's been part of your church, and I was applying for jobs, right? And I told him I'm applying for a job, and he's like, here, I want to give you this. And I look, and it's $100, and I'm like, oh.
Wow.
I'm like, no, I can't take that. I'm like, no. He's like, I want you to take it. I want you to take it. I was scared, right, of being judged, right? Yeah. Even though I knew who I was serving, I was just scared of being judged that, hey, I'm a felon, right? But Pastor Roger didn't show that, and I think that just made me fall deeper in love with God, because I expected different, right? Like, no, you're going to judge me. You're probably going to tell me don't come back, right? But that wasn't what Pastor Roger showed me. He said, this is God's house, and you can be a part of it. And that went a long ways with me, right? And like, he was always, like, just making sure, like, hey, Gabe, you're all right. You're staying on, the right path. And, and he was just always checking on me. He would call me. He would text me, and like, he was keeping me accountable. Somebody that's been away from society for a long time, you can get tempted real easily, right? But I knew God, like God brought me here. Me and my wife, we found each other for a reason. She was going through something, I was going through something, and God brought me here to the church. I've never experienced that, the people in prison that said, I'm gonna, we want the best for you, but when you have somebody like you've never met, like, and they give you that trust, it's just like, wow.
And that's the thing with church. Like, you think, oh, everybody's like this, and they're not all like that at all. Everybody's got a testimony, and it takes various forms. Some don't have, thank God they don't go to the extreme of having to do a bunch of time, but there's a lot of stuff in there, and there's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt and all that stuff too. So, staying close to grace, you go, of course I have grace for you. And I'm can see God doing it because I'm a transformed person. The church starts losing its witness when they stop believing in transformation. And it's usually because they're not experiencing transformation. And then it becomes like a moral club. And that's where churches die, because it's like that was never what this was supposed to be about. It was about dead men living. And so I've got a lot of space for that for you, you know? So one of the things I really love is, and I still tell this story. We started home groups. We had one at, the Zepeda's house. It was, I led it with Michael, and I remember Gabriel and Cello are dating, and he comes over to me and he's like, Hey, I got to ask you a question. If something's okay. Do you remember what you asked me?
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah. So I asked Chris, hey, is it okay if I propose to Cello here?
Oh, no way, at the home group?
In the middle of our home group.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's where it happened. That's where I proposed to her. And she said yes.
And we've been married almost the exact same amount of time too.
Right.
We've both been married 16 years.
Yeah. So,
Dude, how cool.
That's what I'm saying. Like the transformation hasn't stopped since then. So like maybe you can do like a flyover of what has happened since then, like what your life has looked like. Of course, you've now re-entered society. You found a church. You found your woman. God is working in your life. I never felt a hint of you looking back like, I want to go backwards.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Like, you know, that person is dead. You know, like I am, you know, a new man in Christ. Please don't look at the old man, but look at the new man, because that old man was like lost, you know, and I never want to go back. I would, you know, never like on my, you know, wish it on anybody, because going through the system, you know, I saw a lot of stuff that a lot of people will never see, but I saw a lot of stuff go on in there that, you know, I felt bad for the people that were going through it. You know, like if you don't know how to survive, you will be eaten in the system. So if there's any youngsters out there listening, get to know God, you know, because you're not as tough as you think you are. Because I was the same way. I thought I was a tough guy, and I cried at night. I cried in my cell to come home. I cried out to God. So please, if you take something, take that, you know.
Hey, huge difference.
Huge difference, you know.
Like I that's where we even said like Brad's hearing a lot of this stuff for the first time. And because of who you are now, it's shocking to hear.
All glory to God, man, because he's the one that molded this, right? That molded me to, you know, where I'm at, who I am today. And he's still working in me, you know. I mean, he's not done, right? He's not done with any of us. Meeting the church family, you know, Pastor Roger just always being there for us, you know. And when I say us and me and my wife, our family, you know, he married us, you know, he opened the church to us. We got married here. The men's barbecues we would have, you know, just all of that was just like, oh, man, like, why didn't anybody tell me about God earlier, right? Like, yeah. But you know why? Because it wasn't the time, you know? It wasn't the time, you know, because some of us do have to hit that rock bottom to finally say yes. So not only did God deliver me, but he blessed me with this God-loving wife.
Yeah, Cello's awesome. We love Cello.
Yeah, and she keeps me on my toes. I inherited 3 girls, you know, and I have my son and my daughter, right? But I inherited 3 girls. It wasn't easy. It was hard, you know. It was a hard, you know, journey, you know, getting to where we are today, you know. You know, when there's co-parenting and all, you know, it can get a little, you know, hard, you know, but by the grace of God, we're making it, you know. And I completed my parole and everything, you know, and moved into my, you know, the job. You know, I've been there for a very long time now. You know, we were able to buy our home, our first home, and I never saw that.
Yeah.
But God knew. And, you know, if there's somebody out there that doesn't believe, like, I don't know what to tell you, but God is real, you know, and he keeps showing me every day that he is real. He's been awesome, you know, and here I am, you know, sitting down with you two, you know, you know, I mean, that's a blessing, right? Like,
yeah.
No, it's been like a blessing to share your story too. And I just think like, as much as I would have never known, because you're so transformed and you come in wearing these nice colored shirts and you're with your wife and
he's a
always
suit now.
very, very polite. And, but on the flip side, knowing what I know about your past doesn't make me look at you different either. And I think some of us go different roads, and I think we need to be better at allowing people, like looking at them how God does. And I think it's really cool that, you know, Roger invited you in and you've been a part of this church for like all these years now. And you're like a foundational part of this church that's here like every week. And it's like, it's just really cool to see. And, you know, Christ's blood was enough. That's the reality. It is enough to cover wherever you've been, but man, you got to turn the other way too. And that's like the core message of your story is like, you could not be more different than this person we've been talking about, but also in the humanity of it. When we talk about all this stuff, I completely get how you ended up in a gang. It makes complete sense to me.
Right.
Because everything you love about the church now, I always say Satan is a counterfeit master.
Absolutely.
And gangs and scenes, the punk scene, the straight edge scene, all the like gang life, cartels, all these things are counterfeits of the community that we were meant for, because we're meant to be in community together. That's the reality. Just a lot of us looking for acceptance, looking for love, we end up in communities that aren't always doing good things.
Yeah, for sure.
What I love is you've also made a path for people from your old neighborhood, like, you know, like where they can see. Because what we were talking about was like a victim of like, you know, oh yeah, my dad's like this, but his dad was like this. And so it's like, well, so that just kind of keeps getting passed down until someone doesn't go that way.
Right.
And I see just so much love even for your inherited daughters and like, you know, all of that. And I think it's really cool because I've heard it out of their mouths. Like some of the people from the neighborhood back in the day, like can look to you as like, oh my gosh, that's a path out. Right. And Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but God is a creator of good things. Like he brings order and flourishing and life to what he does. So like God has used you not just as like a standalone story, but now as like a roadmap to be like, look what God can do. And no matter how much you think, I don't even know how I'm going to find my way out of this, here's an example of what he can do in someone's life. And that's just so beautiful to me. And I've seen that in you for years. And I just am like, it makes me happy.
If God changed me, he can change you, you know, and don't let nobody tell you that it's too late, because somebody told me it was too late and it was only the beginning.
So I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's like the closing note right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing,
thanks, man. That was awesome.
No, yeah. That's all glory to God, man. I'm just like, I want to say another thing too. You know, I know we talked about my dad, you know, and how, you know, he was, but, you know, he passed away in 2020. You know, he suffered a lot, but, you know, I would give everything to have him right now, you know, even through everything, you know. And I think I say that because I know there's somebody out there listening that probably doesn't speak to their parents, right? Speak to them, talk to them, you know, because I wish I had my dad, you know. Yeah. My last memories of him are carrying him in and out of my car every time I had to pick him up at the hospital because he couldn't walk anymore, you know. So, you know, make it right, you know, regardless of who's right, who's wrong, you know, make it right. And if it's not your parents, with whoever, you know, but I would give everything to be with him, to have him here. I forgive him. You know, I forgave him a long time ago. I told him on his deathbed that I forgave him, and I couldn't have done it without God, you know, so.
Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and this was just a really encouraging time. And I hope whoever listened to this, whenever, because this could go years out, someone could find this, that it spoke to you guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to the Voyager Podcast. If you'd like to reach out, you can reach us through Instagram at the Voyager Podcast. We hope this has been encouraging for you. Until next time.